Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's lesson. So, today we are going to discuss the elementary part of biology, which is the characteristics of living organisms. Okay, so living organisms have these clear characteristics that make them very unique, and these characteristics are just things we're going to learn in this lesson. Okay, so the learning objectives are we need to know how to define living organisms. We're going to list the characteristics of living things, and we're going to explain each characteristics with good and clear examples. Okay, so living things are things that have life. For example, human being will have life. We can breathe, we can reproduce, we can excrete. So we have life. That's why we're able to survive in this planet to find ourselves. Okay, so a very good example of living things: you have human, we have fish, you have trees, and you have birds. Okay, so anything that don't have life in them, that can't breathe, that cannot reproduce, they are known as non-living things. Okay, and a good example of non-living things: you have the car, you have the water, you have toys. But the good thing is that even though they are non-living things, they don't have life in them. We humans utilize them for a lot of things. In fact, we cannot do without them. So we make use of non-living things to survive in the habitat. Okay. All right. So for us to understand the characteristics of living things, we need to understand what MRSGREN is. It's just an acronym that gives us a clear understanding of what the characteristics of living organisms are. All right. So in this table, we just bring out each letters and explain what they stand for. So for the first letter, which is M, M stands for movement. Okay. R stands for respiration. Then S stands for sensitivity. Then G stands for growth. R for reproduction. E for excretion. Then N for nutrition. All right. So we're going to explain all of them and we'll see what it entails. All right. So the first one is movement. All right. So human organisms, living organisms tend to move from one place to another for different reasons. For example, we can leave a particular area and go to a new area for survival to find food, probably to reproduce, or to go and trade, or maybe uh, migrate from one place to another for survival. So we go to different places for different reasons. All right, even birds fly from one place to another just to survive. For example, it's all called seasonal migration. So if the environmental condition in the particular place is not favorable, let me say for example rainy season, those birds can fly to regions where the climate is quite better. For example, some regions that experience dry season or summertime where they tend to enjoy the sun and strive very well. So they tend to move from one place to another to survive. So movement is a very important aspect of living things. So example is human tends to walk, birds fly, and plant bend towards sunlight. So plant depend on sunlight for photosynthesis. So the source, the area where the light is coming from, the plant tend to bend to that direction so that it can trap the sunlight energy for them to survive. Okay. So the next one is respiration. Respiration is very important because without breathing, no organism can survive. Both plants and animals cannot survive without respiring. Okay. So we're taking oxygen into our nostril and we give out carbon dioxide as a waste product. So we all respire by breathing in and breathing out for us to be able to survive. So this is one of the characteristics of living things. Okay, so human breathing oxygen is an important gas which we utilize for respiration in the body. Okay, so the next one is sensitivity. So we humans and animals are very sensitive. For example, if you're inside a room and the room is very dark, if I decide to on the lights, what happens? You become sensitive to the sun, to the new lights which have been exposed in the dark room. All right. So, for example, if you come outside and the weather is very cold, your body is sensitive to cold. You go inside or you put on the cloth or the coat to cover your body. That is sensitivity. Now, for example, if you look at this picture, the water is boiling very hot. If you get close to it, you're able to feel the heat and you know that yes, if I put my hand in this water, it's going to burn your hand and you have to withdraw your hand very fast, So this is what it's all about. So it gives you this kind of awareness for you to be able to perceive the environment and be able to survive in your environment, and it prevents you from more danger and from any form of negative thing that can happen to an organism in a habitat. Okay, so example of sensitivity: you pull away from hot objects and plant tend to respond to light. So plants are sensitive to light, and this is called phototropism. Okay, so this is just the aspect of sensitivity, just for us to understand. All right, so the next one is growth. So all organisms were at juvenile stage at the first place, then get to a point where we start developing into maturity. Okay, so growth is the irreversible increase in size. So once you increase the height in size, it becomes unreversible. For example, once you start growing from a baby and you get into an adult stage, you cannot go back to being a baby anymore. All right, because your body have undergo a lot of cell division, and the cells have started to elongate and get to maturation. Okay, so the organism tend to what to grow from one stage to another. Okay, for example, you can see this plant growing. Once these plants are grow to the mature stage, what happens? They tend to reproduce or they tend to die. When they die back to the soil again, they'll grow again to maturity. They die back to the soil. So growth is irreversible. All right. So a good example of growth is a baby which grow into adulthood. All right. So the next one is reproduction. So all organisms undergoes reproduction in different ways. All right. So human beings will tend to reproduce when the male and female gametes comes together, to fuse together to give rise to what? To an offspring. All right. So these two organisms tend to reproduce. So the same thing occurs in plants. We use the term pollination because fertilization takes place between the stigma and the anther. All right. So the pollen grain is transferred from the anther to the stigma. Once it gets to the stigma, once the stigma fertilizes the pollen grain, then the plant will tend to produce seeds and fruits. Okay. So this is just a very important aspect of reproduction. And why reproduction is very important is because with reproduction, new organisms is introduced into a population. So it's very important, and this can prevent what we call extinction from happening. And extinction is when organisms tend to die and the existence and they wipe out of existence without them being existing anymore. For example, you can see that we have a particular species, suddenly those species are no more existing. Okay, so this prevents something like that from happening. Okay, so an offspring, a baby, comes from reproduction. All right. So the next one here we have excretion. So we have different organisms that tend to excrete. So the amoeba can excrete. Your plants tend to remove unwanted substances. So excretion is the removal of unwanted substance in the body. So those substances don't need your body, you tend to remove it. And this is what we call osmoregulation. When you tend to regulate your internal environment, removing excess substance or unwanted substance out of your body. Those substances can be removed in form of sweat, in form of urine, and in form of carbon dioxide. Like I told you, you take in oxygen and you give out carbon dioxide as a waste product. Okay. So nutrition. All organisms tend to eat. Okay, all right. So you can see this guy enjoying this meal. So we eat a lot of food to get all the necessary nutrients for the body to develop and for an organism to tend to survive. So we have different organisms. We have organisms that eat on plants. We call herbivory, and organisms that feed on flesh, carnivory. They also have organisms that feed on both flesh and plants, that is omnivory. And we have organisms that feed on dead organisms. We call them scavengers. So all organisms have their own feeding pattern for them to be able to survive. So this is one of the characteristics of living things. Okay, so plants make food through photosynthesis, and animal tends to eat food. All right. So now, quiz time. Okay, so which of the following is a characteristic of living things? This is a very straightforward question and it's very easy. The first one is rusting. Rusting doesn't make any sense. B, breathing. Breathing makes sense. C, breaking. Breaking doesn't make any sense. We have D, melting. Melting doesn't make any sense. So with this, breathing is correct because all organisms tend to what? To breathe. So I want you to answer this question. Just put the correct answer in the comment section. So which characteristics involve removing waste products from the body. Okay, so we have nutrition, we have reproduction, we have excretion, and movement. Okay, so this question is very easy. But my next question, trust me, I'm not going to be very nice with you. I'm going to put a more stretched question to make you think and all that. So these are the first. This is my first topic, and I want you guys to use this as a warm up for biology. All right. So this is the end of today's lesson. If you watch this video to this point, just put a like, comment, and share. Okay, and please subscribe to my channel. All right, because my idea of this channel is to teach all topics in biology. So I want you guys to join me in this journey while we explore all important topics and answer all questions on how to do with biology. All right. So see you in my next lesson, and thank you very much.